So we returned to the Dragonborn stories in this little one, and I decided I needed to do a recap. The recap went for a little long, but again, it's probably been like a month or two since I'd done it. So kind of fitting to kind of catch everybody up. That's the reason why it took so long. I should probably, if I remember correctly, I probably won't remember though to actually tag the recap. But whatever. Let's get into just kind of the things that went through my head making this. So, I wanted this story to kind of follow place with Tonrak. You know, he's a character I haven't used all too that much. I mean, he's kind of been the background, bit of the laughing, you know, making fun of people, sort of just, you know, the typical likes to drink, likes to fight, and likes to poke fun at people sort of bloke. And I like that. He's a very down-to-earth kind of character. You know, he doesn't need to be the heroic this and that and why is the main, you know, thing. But I think it's about time and appropriate. It's an appropriate time to actually have him now take lead of his own little stories. And this, again, what I've promised with this little new series, I don't know how little will be, with Journeys of the Dragon, no, that's the old one, damn it, Paths of the Doom Driven, that it will be darker. And sometimes, you know, the guy that was sitting in the background that was laughs and smiles can be very important to the future stories of, you know, of dark times. And so I really wanted Tonrak to kind of have this episode, and a couple more episodes as we see at the end of this, him and Minerva are wandering off to the rift to save their people. And I don't know how I'll do that one, to be honest with you. I don't know if I'll have a journey by, you know, step by step from start to finish, or will I cut through certain pieces and just get straight to the meat and bones of it all by kind of just pinpointing certain places they've been. I don't know. But I did want to start this episode off like any other episode, like any other Journeys of the Dragonborn episode. That people just around, they're doing their thing, they're part of the team. None of these guys are any wiser to what's happened, right? At Solitude. It's just, to them, it's just another day. It's just another day in the Journeys of the Dragonborn. After Ragnar had left to go join the wedding, and quite a few of them had a bad feeling about the play, you know, what was going on. This is why Tonrak's leaving. I mean, he was meant to wait for the Legion to rock up. As we know, with the Contractor's last chapter, he wiped him out. And they were going to send a legion to this place, pretty much, I think, essentially after the, well, from whatever they could scrounge through with other holds are also getting attacked by the Draga. And, I mean, that legion would have been an extension of the Solitude Guard that went to go refit it. But Contractor, again, goes and wipes them all out. And he's got this horrible feeling from last night that him, Minerva, and Cecilia both felt, and obviously everyone else that wasn't around, that, you know, he can't sit around waiting any longer. He's worried, and rightfully so, of course. So I was like, all right, so he's got to piss off and get a move on, because he's not the sort of bloke. I don't see Tonrak as a very patient man. He seems very impatient. And so if he's got a nagging feeling just roaring at him, he's going to move. He's going to get the hell out of there. And, you know, he's going to do whatever he can to get out. And this is kind of that. This is Tonrak, you know, setting up a baseline defense with the Stormcloaks, the Imperials, and even the Thalmor to protect the town until the Imperials arrive. That sort of thing. So this is kind of what this entire little part in Morthal is about. Him and the team here being none the wiser of what's happened, and getting ready to move out. Now this little spot here, I mean, from what happened the last few episodes of the Journeys sort of thing, the Stormcloaks weren't there. They rocked up the day after the battle because of Sigun, and yeah, if you're a fan of the series, you know what's happened. But having the Thalmor and the Stormcloaks sitting in the same room with each other, oh dude, that's like, even though it's all make believe, you'd feel the tension. It was like, it was dangerous. But yeah, we got this, you know, little beef brewing with the Stormcloaks and Imperials sitting beside each other, and they're agreeing on all multiple fields. Imperials aren't going to say shit because they're, you know, kind of in a sort of peaceful thing with Thalmor, so they're not going to be opening their mouths up. But he's a Thalmor, he's going to be a racist prick, obviously, you know. I mean, video game racism is acceptable. It's encouraged even in most games. But Tonrak's like, I don't give a shit what you think, dude. Nobody likes him. You can either stay here and do what you're told, or you can piss off back east and tell Ulfric that you failed in gathering the Dragonborn support because you're a bunch of cowards that would not follow simple instructions. And so he's just putting the foot down. He's not there to negotiate. He wants to get the fuck out of Morthal and get back to Solitude. and he's just putting the hammer down. Now, obviously, I had to remember who this kind of character is when I made him. He's like very tough, rough sort of bloke, and he doesn't tolerate bullshit. I mean, he does like to make a lot of fun, this and that, but I think, you know, the guys that are like that, you know, when things become serious, they become serious. You know, they're kind of perceived as the guy that kind of makes fun of things. But when the shit starts hitting the fan, these guys are the blades of that fan. So, you know, Tonrak doesn't mess around. And obviously the sort of weird Jarl, she's a bit weird, you know. And Tonrak to her is a bit of a nut job. No, she to him is a bit of a nut job. He's like, what the fuck? How does she know these things? And what the hell is she saying? Sort of atmosphere. So a little bit of advice that she gave Ragni before she left is when you're surrounded by darkness, remember those that follow you will help you come out of it. And the darkness, well, it's arrived by this point. So, and there's plenty more to follow, obviously. But that's kind of that. It's very, I don't know, I put way too much detail on this sort of stuff. Now, he calls the Thalmor. I mean, I keep forgetting a name, Valandil or Valandril, or I don't even remember a friggin' name. And he's not going to call her by a name. I mean, absolutely not. Ragni might, because she, is, I don't know, at the moment, a kind soul. But yeah, he's straight up like, Thalmor, follow me. So he's not going to call her by name, because she has not yet earned that right. And no one gives a shit about her name. She's a Thalmor. I mean, let's be honest, most of us here watching this think that Thalmor are a piece of shit. You know, because they represent the Old Merry Dominion, which could be a nice place, but the Thalmor are a bit like the SS of the Old Merry Dominion. They are pretty much the dudes knocking on your door and asking where are the Jews, essentially. So no one likes them. This is kind of a little, you know, Tonrak isn't a rush to leave, but he's got to make sure that Freya's okay, because Freya was injured in the episodes prior, and she's been kept in a deep sleep so her body can heal. And being like one of the things I made up, a pureborn werewolf, that she can heal quicker than mere mortals. And for that, she needs to go to sleep. But she did transform with an arrow inside of her, and was just messed around her sort of stuff, and blah, blah, blah. She's in a deep sleep. Which actually, you know, I want to get into this real quick, right? Really gave me some ideas. I mean, I just wanted to put Freya into a sleep and she'd wake up after this and be a bit shocked and surprised and go running to Ragni as soon as she finds out. But coming into this episode, because a lot of these things, like, I improvise everything here. Improvise. I have an idea where I want to go, and I go into that direction. And when I get there, I just improvise the shit out of everything. And it's actually going to pay off for later on, an episode of its own, because Freya's in a deep sleep, and so is the Dragonborn. And when I was doing that, which we'll get to a little bit later, I had an idea cross my mind, which I thought was absolutely legendary, because Daedric princes are spiteful beings, and they'll hurt the ones you love if you've made enemies with them. And it's not directly, this one isn't directly aimed at Ragni, but aimed at a certain pale lady in dark armour, which will come into context a bit later on. Anyway, we meet Angie, and you know, if you guys know, I like to have things come full circle. We've got Andrea behind us, and that's one of Minerva's people she met in her life before the Dragonborn story. And Angie right here is someone that Freya met in her life before she met the Dragonborn. So I like to have all these characters kind of come full circle and, like, you know, like, join the team and sort of things like that. You know, sometimes the world can be a small place, and you'll bump into people that you knew a long time ago, and they could especially come onto this journey. You know, it wasn't just the Dragonborn that had all these people come and join her, but it was people that they met in their lives that came and joined them. That sort of thing that I thought was really cool. It'd be a really cool thing to do, at least for the story in Skyrim. And I got a new voice pack for the female Dark Elf. I put her voice into it because there's a future character that will replace a certain character in the future on a more darker path compared to what she was. Well, compared to what was a kinder soul, will now be kind of brought back by a bit of a darker soul, sort of thing. I'll get into that much later on. I need to get to a certain point first, and that's going to take some bloody time. But yeah, this is essentially Tonrak. You know, he's pissed. Yeah, oh, not pissed. He's impatient, which is the same thing. So the whole idea of this, someone remind me, please the hell remind me somehow, to put Borka in the next story for his story because they're going into the Rift. And I don't always remember this sort of stuff, so I need to go to Dragonbridge, and then Borka's waiting for him with sore ribs, and she's like, dude, I don't care. I've heard what's happened. I'm coming. Sort of thing. So let's do that. Someone remind me, because I need to put her in it. Because if I move off without her, and I go for too long, I'm just going to keep her where she is, and that's going to suck, or I'll find some other way. But whatever the hell. Anyway, main goal of this was to just, like try and fill in some what's going to happen to Freya sort of thing. Because obviously she's a very important character. She is being kept asleep so her body can heal. And it's only been, 2 days since then for her. So, she might be a pureborn werewolf, but she's still immortal, and it still takes time to make sure that she's okay. I mean, her wounds were healed, but her insides were ravished around a bit by an arrow and stuff like that. Whatever. I'll just make shit up as I go. Like I said, I improvise everything. Sort of thing. I think I improvised that then and there. I had no plans of wounding Freya, but I think during the battle I ended up finding her in bleed out position because I did make her immortal. I think. I don't really remember, but she was in bleed out, so I thought I'd use that as part of the story, and that she was, hit by a rogue arrow sort of thing. So let's progress on to actually something different. And one of my favourite things that I did with this is coming up real soon with Valendil, or Valada, whatever the hell I named her, the Thelmore, one of my favourite things. And I like these kind of conversations. This is what Tonrak, this is the kind of bloke that he is. He's just a, he's a mix between humour and seriousness, and I love that because it's very much like myself. I like to, anybody that knows me in real life, that have a memory of me making them laugh. And if shit's gone real, then they've seen me switch. But he gets up to Thelmore because she's having a conversation with Rognik, and Rognik is a Knight of the Nine, and there's no actually lore in any of that sort of shit, which is wild, what happened to the Knights of the Nine. But in mine, they were an order like the Vigilance and were wiped out during the early days of the war by the Thelmore. And I like to think that Valendil was part of that. She was, one of the elves that were there wiping out their order during that fateful day of the invasion from Valenwood, since it borders the Valenwood border, the Knights of the Nine Priory. But they're making fun of her. She's getting upset about the whole entire, sort of thing. And Tonrak's like, do not call me a fool. Like, he's like, straight up, if you want to be part of this team, you have to get us to like you. And nobody likes you, so at least try. And I always thought, like, how do I mercilessly add her into the team? And, obviously the following him when they were told not to and helping them save lives could definitely help. It's a door opener. But I didn't really exactly know how I was going to really absorb her into it properly. And I thought, well, this is an actually great example of how she would join the team by gathering support amongst them, Tonrak doesn't like him. He's had issues with them in his past in Hammerfell. None of them, I think, like her. But by, looking after Freya, they might even gather Cecilia's support. All that sort of stuff. I don't know. Like, honestly, it's unique because the Thelmore don't have a peace treaty with the Stormcloaks, and hopefully she's at least somewhat slightly trusted enough to follow them into the east again. And I wonder how that's going to go with the Thelmore and Ulfric Stormcloak and the team in that area. And that's going to be an interesting sort of take. But anyway, Tonrak says something, and you can see the look on Rognik's face where he's like, what the fuck just came out of your mouth? That is disgusting. And it comes up, I think, really soon because he's smiling right now. And there it is. And he's like, dude, what? That is disgusting. Absolute filth. And he's just thinking, like, I get a moment of peace while Freya's asleep because she's a disturbed individual with what comes out of her brain. And then Tonrak says it, and he's like, man, you guys are way too similar. And they kind of are. They're both like making fun of each other. They're both like saying disturbing stuff. And I don't know. They're my favourite little duo, Tonrak and Freya. But this is where I wanted to put Valendil before anything else. I wanted her to basically oversee Freya. And she's obviously doing this so she can get Tonrak's support. Because she at least needs one person's support before anything else. Before she can start building on the others. Even the Nightingales, which is she doesn't have to worry about that one anymore. But yeah, that sort of thing. She's got to build it up. And having Tonrak and maybe even Cecilia and even Freya on her side is a big help because the only person they really need after that is kind of Minerva, and she's already gathered a few of them by that point. So anyway, I tried to skip through a lot of the stuff to try and get the story moving, but Tonrak, he's moving out. He's he's getting back to Solitude. He's gathered his forces. He's left the Stormcloaks, the Imperials, and the Thalmor there as defense until the Empire rocks up with enough men to actually set the place up for guards. And yeah, he's got this doubtful feeling, and he's trying to push through it. And he's self-doubting himself, and he's got this. The closer he gets to it, the more it amps up. But he's like, nah, it can't be real, can't be right, doesn't make any sense, blah blah blah. And it even brings up some memories of, which I haven't talked about in a long time, because again, the last time I talked about this sort of stuff was his intro sort of episode of why he was what he was, and that was the death of his mother. That he was working and he came back and he found his mother basically naked and bloodied and beaten to death on the floor of his home because of a drunk patron that followed his mother home from the inn she was working at and raped and killed her. And he went into the prison cell. He was allowed into the prison cell where this man was, and he completely just broke his hands, his knuckles, everything, just turned this guy's head into a watermelon, and things like that. And he brings that up. I mean, he's obviously, I like to see Tonrak in his mid-30s, like 35 years old, something like that. And he's obviously pushed a lot past his life since then, because he would have been like a teenager, like 17, 18, 19 sort of thing. And having these sort of, like having the fears of what's happening to him right now brings those old feelings up. Because anyone that's gone through some terrible shit, man, like you could go 20 years without even thinking about it, or you'd always think about it without feeling it, and then something pops up very similar, and those feelings just rush through like they never left. And that's kind of what's happening to Tonrak right here, and he's walked back. But he's trying to push through it by going, it's just bullshit. Just think of something a bit more positive. Like, I wonder how the wedding was, how happy Ragni's going to be. She's going to have a good, she's going to be more hopeful now that she's seen this, and we'll get back to gathering words of power and saving the world. And I kind of also fear the day that maybe, that I really, this feels like I belong. Like, I don't want to go back to being the harbinger. I don't, this is where I belong, this is where everyone belongs, sort of thing. And I don't know, this is just kind of the way that I see it with Tonrak and the team, that, that he would never, it's obviously very risky, and, everything's very risky, but this is the moment of their lives. This is what they were born to do. And thinking about a life after, what your essential purpose was, it wouldn't feel very good, even if it was a peaceful life of you living the rest of your life in peace. I don't know, man. I don't know. It still feel very daunting, not being part of it all. This little bit right here, he gets closer to Solitude, he feels like something's hunting him. And something is, and it's hunted every last one of us as Skyrim players. The infamous friggin' courier. He knows where you are, wherever you are, no matter what you're doing, he will find you. He is just an absolute weapon. And, he rocks up, and I thought, oh shit, I'll actually use him right now. And I did. I used him as a messenger, there's actually a couple of them in this. I came across a couple of them doing this story. They were just random couriers, but like it's this is kind of where it gets the news for what's happened. Getting close to Solitude, a courier finds him and his team, and he delays the message that Minerva's looking for him, and tries to delay what's happened. He gets the letter, I think, but doesn't even bother to read it or look at it. I mean, it's just confirmed all his fears from the walk here, from the last night, from the nightmare that he's had. And you can see his eyes have just opened up in his helmet. Like, that's fear right there. And, it's just, it's fight or flight. And, I mean, for him, it's both. He just runs. Now, as you see, this song went for a while, and it kind of goes through Ragni's life. I wanted it to be kind of an overview of her life. So I wrote a lot of shit into this to try and get the right sort of fit for the song. Obviously, they're made by AI, and I don't claim that I made them. That's an art form AI. It is a tool, and this tool helped me for the story. And I want to go an overview of her life, just looking back for what's happened from there to here. And you see all this, and the reason why I did this song is because simply it took me 1 minute and 53 seconds to run from Dragonbridge to Solitude. Obviously, it's Skyrim, it's made in an old engine, not compared to anything you would expect from today's sort of lengthy, big open map games. But I needed to make the run seem a lot longer. So I put the song in here with the overview of Ragni's life. I put I put a few hours into actually trying to think about and figure out what kind of song would fit for this. And like I put a lot of, like I probably wrote like a book trying to get the right fit for this song. And one came out really good, and then all of a sudden it cuts for like, it goes from like, and it kind of made a lot of sense because it cuts from like the fight with Elduin and then obviously the contractor killing Serana. And it kind of makes sense because stories aren't going to really get into your deep, like major stories throughout history don't get into the personal days and personal lives of the people or characters they're following. They go through the most important parts. And Ragni's most important part of her story was fighting Elduin. And then, there's going to be a bit like, it says that she went and gathered words of power. And then the next thing the book would probably reference is that she went to a wedding in Solitude and was almost killed, and her wife or lover was killed along with one of her friends. It's not going to really get into deeps and depths about that character's personal life or the things in between the major events. And that's essentially what the song did. It talked about her childhood. It talked about a story, going in, following her sister's dream. It was... and then it kind of her joining the Dawn Guard when winter was arriving instead of following her dream as to travel Cyrodiil as a bard. And then kind of, being thrown in, like meeting I like the way, because obviously if you haven't really noticed by now, the song does come from the description of Kine. So Kine's the one singing it, Kenrith. And there's a little detail into that, but I don't want to spend 6 minutes talking about it. So it's a song that I wanted really kind to sing to Ragni in her darkest moments, sort of overviewing her life that she's been watching her ever since. And kind says a word here. I sent you a dark shadow, or I sent you a dark heart to guide you on your journey. It's like Kine had sent Serana, knowing what Serana was, knowing who Serana served, what created her, that Kine sent her to Ragni. It wasn't Ragni that found her, it was... it was Kine's plan all along to send her something that destroyed her life to heal her heart in the darkest moments. And this bit right here, actually, the song goes off where Kine describes that she sent something that destroyed her life to heal her life and things like that, which I really liked. And then it kind of depicts into that she had to follow her destiny and fight dragons and all this. Every single time I do a video, my phone goes off. But yeah, it was kind of, I really liked it. It took me a few goes to get it right, but I really liked how this song turned out with the story of Ragni, especially Serana, and things like that. I really like how this kind of bit turns out, because obviously it shows that Serana, the time jump in her story, and then it shows like her heart being healed with the kiss of Serana. And then it straight away goes from that, and then the tone of it changes. Like you hear the war drums, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And then I had to put the dragon fight in there, and then it's just like you hear the mood of it feel when she's fighting the dragon, and that was pretty bloody cool. I really liked that. But yeah, this song was just essentially, it's a song by Kine, sort of singing about the chosen one's life, and it's also to kill the time between running from Dragonbridge to Solitude. Might have made a bit more sense if I had done it leaving Morthal straight away, but I kind of wanted to get a bit more of Tonrak's general feelings out before a song came out, and that's kind of the way I wanted it to go. Because as you can see, the song brings up this journey, then it goes straight into like the future, killing Serana and turning her to ash. Now, I've got many favourite female characters, Violet from Arcane, Korra from Legends of Korra, and of course, Ahsoka from Star Wars The Clone Wars. She is pretty much the inspiration of Ragni. A young and naive, bloody hot-headed young woman. In this case, it was a teenager for Ahsoka, but she grows over time, becomes a much-loved character. And she did in her early days. She wasn't really liked, but she became loved. And Ahsoka, this thing right here is a sort of nod to Ahsoka, because in Ahsoka's story in the Clone Wars, she's killed and she's brought back by the Daughter of Light, of the light side. And ever since that moment, when Ahsoka's in certain dangerous positions or this and that, you'll always find like an owl flying overhead, and that is kind of the animal of the sister that she always picked to be. So it's like the light side was always watching over her. And I really wanted this kind of feeling for Ragni in that certain space, that she would have, you know, sort of the kind bird flying over her. Now, where she is right now is actually a really cool mod. I think it's called, I don't know what it's actually called, but it's a little Daedric quest where you get to go into, like, save someone from a nightmare from Vermina's Round. And I talked about this beforehand, where it's sort of, the Daedric princes are spiteful creatures, and they'll hurt the ones you love. And this is kind of, you know, from what Ragni's seen in her last episode, she saw some horrible shit. Some, you know, she was there for a hopeful, beautiful day, and it was just turned to absolute evil. And, you know, when she passed out, it's of such the sort of depravity, the level of it. She passed out and fell into a dream, and it wasn't a good dream. It was a dream that a certain Daedric prince took opportunity of and took her from reality into Giggity Land, Quagmire. So she's not really, the reason she doesn't wake up, because she can't. And Kind's birds are overwatching, you know, watching over her, even in the Daedric realms of Oblivion. She can't help her, but she can watch her, sort of thing. And this is where the idea came up to even link her in a future episode. I really want to do an episode where Freya is also still locked in dreams, and she somehow finds Ragni locked in her dreams, and they have a little bit of a, you know, walk through Ragni's nightmares, and Freya shows her one of her nightmares. And it's one of the things I've always regretted, is not showing Freya's background. And with this, I can actually show her childhood, how Pac was murdered, and how she was found by Cecilia. So I can actually do that. A couple of things I'll get to at the very end of this sort of overview of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I really built Ahsoka off. My God, I said Ahsoka. I really built Ragni off Ahsoka, and having that owl fly over Ahsoka, I really wanted to use that with the hawk, which is sort of the animal avatar or sort of image of Kinnereth, the goddess of wind and the goddess of storm. Now, Tonrak, he gets here. It's a blockade. There's a few civilians outside. Yeah, this is obviously the day after the assassination, and Imperials are on cleanup duty because a good 98% of the guard that were there were killed. And 2% survived injuries, well, on that night, and if maybe another, 0.5% died afterwards. But Tonrak's here, he's impatient, doesn't know what the hell's going on, these guards aren't letting him in, and he's about to lose his shit. He's not a very patient person, and his anger can get the better of him sometimes. And, he's hearing all this horrible stuff, especially the Dragonborn's been hurt. Yes, he's a lion in a way, he's a protector. And, he's had enough of this shit. When you see someone walk in the background, he's full on threatening to kill these guys and then get the fuck out of his way. He's not in a mood for negotiation or being told no. He will go through them if he needs to. And Karsten shows up. He's apparently a fan favorite, and that's gonna, certain person's gonna love that attention. My biggest critic. And so he's like, yep, he's one of ours, and he allows Tonrak and Rognik through, and you get to see the scene of kind of what's happened afterwards, which I didn't actually remember this because I thought I'd fix it up until I looked at it just now, but those targets are meant to be over the side. But that's the problem with moving things in-game, is that sometimes they relocate back to where they originally started. So those targets are meant to be on the wall over there, which I didn't realise at the time because the positioner keeps moving them back whenever I restart the game, and they're going to keep, like this right here, that bloody seat, pain in the ass. It's meant to be over in the wall, and it's not. But we see it's back there now. I had to fix it up. I was too lazy to do everything again. And Tonrak sees a scene of like these soldiers absolutely massacred inside this carriage. The reason I did that was because for some reason the Solitude Castle Dower hasn't got any blood meshes. Like all the blood ends up in the bottom of the ground under the castle, like the actual ground under the castle. It doesn't end up on the actual mesh that you walk upon. So I had to throw them in a carriage and cut the carriage up and bunch of stuff to make it look pretty gory. That maybe the rains washed it away, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, he sees the aftermath of all this, and he hears that only one assassin did this. And at this current time, he doesn't even know that Serana is dead. You know, like that. Minerva and him did not know that Serana wasn't with. Like, they thought Serana was with Centaurus in the, like, you know, when Cecilia came to visit, and then being told that Serana was killed, and yeah, especially the Nightingale, like that just that just shocked him. You know, like I was meant to remember to have Serana to bring up that, Cecilia, that Serana was not there with him, but I forgot because I looked at it. So they would have continued to think that Serana was with Centaurus, or Cecilia was seeing them, and then, you know, being told that she's dead, it's like, holy shit. And, you know, he didn't much like Serana, but he knew of her importance to Ragni, that she was her biggest protector, and that it made Ragni feel special and loved. It's like a lot of us as mates, you know, with our mates, they'll have this girlfriend, and we think she's a fucking dickhead, but she makes him happy, and we're like, yep, rightio, you're good, you know, just don't be a dickhead and don't hurt him, and you'll be good with us, sort of thing. And that's kind of the way that Tonrak is. He's like that. He doesn't like Serana, but he likes what she does. You know, protects Ragni, and of course makes her feel loved. And being told that she's dead was just like, holy shit, things are getting far worse than I could have possibly imagined. Again, I moved all the stuff in-game. I didn't go into the creation kit. Probably should have. But I really wanted to show the after effects of what happened. You know, like, people are going to be running. There's going to be bodies or injured people being dragged into the temple. Everything's going to be moved out of the way and things like that. I really wanted to make Solitude feel like something had just gone wrong, you know, and it was panic and fear and sort of emergency that kind of made the city look a little bit different in this part of the game, especially when we get inside with the temple, you know, a place of worship. Now looks a bit more like a field hospital, because you've got a lot of, you know, injured dudes here. A couple of them are dead on their beds. There's blood everywhere from the mages and soldiers trying to, you know, stitch them back up and heal them back up and that sort of thing. And yeah, it was once, you know, a day before, held a wedding of two people being united in marriage, and now it's filled full of blood and injured and dead, and, you know, it's nuts. It's also being guarded by Daedra. There's 3 Daedra in here. Like, can you, like, how crazy is that? There's a bloody, you know, there's a Demora, and there's 2 bloody Daedra from the Shivering Isles. Like, that's nuts. But he finally sees her, and as you can see, her legs are all cut up and scarred up because, you know, when the contractor attacked her, I was playing as he did the whole dual wheel sort of power attack and sliced her up, and obviously he did that to. He wanted to be there. He wanted to cause her pain. He wanted to really revel in her suffering, but he wanted to cut her legs up so she couldn't chase after him and become a threat. And so that's what he did. He couldn't kill Ragni because of Sithis' demand, but he could immobilize her, sort of thing. And I mean, the blades, his blades are so fine sharp that it was easy for Marana to kind of heal Ragni's legs back together, you know, just like it wasn't a tear, it was like crocodile teeth knives, like a Bowie knife. It's like the serrated blades with like teeth in them. Those cause some serious damage. But I like to think that Miriam's razor is so fine sharp that it would just be so easy to seal things back together, sort of thing. Tonrak and Minerva are obviously having a rather compassionate moment with what's just happened, and yeah, their sort of relationship dynamic is like, you know, after like Elderween's feat, she went and showed him a mask, and they end up rooting, and their relationship's been just one of like just mutual beneficial time together, you know, like they spend their nights, they have their thing, they're not lovey-dovey, they're not like that full Prince Charming and Princess this. It's not like that for them. They're both equal in their, you know, their risk and their everything. They're just, I like to see them as equals, you know, the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild as one sort of people, very much like Elder Scrolls Online. They both come together to save the world from oblivion, sort of thing. But I really like their relationship. I really do. Obviously, we get into Minerva showing up just after the contractor is left, seeing the absolute massacre of what's happened, and finding Ragni sort of sleepless on the ground, and finding the Nightingale dead, and like she would have been in the fear panic of it, because I like to see Minerva as like a mother to Ragni. And I like to see Cecilia as also a mother, but one that's a bit more tough love, where Minerva's a bit more compassionate love, and she sees Ragni and just the fear runs through her head, the absolute panic, just, anyone that's, seeing someone you love badly hurt, everything runs through your brain at a million miles a second, and she just sees Ragni pass out on the floor, dead on the floor, and maybe, and then she doesn't even pay attention to the nightingale with her head cut off laying right beside her. Like, she's obviously seen her, but nothing's going through her head to worry about it at this current time. She's more worried about Ragni, that sort of thing. So I thought it'd be a little cool overview, because, like I said, in Centaurus' chapter, on the first episode of Doom Driven, that Minerva left after Cecilia had left and went to go discover what had happened, and that's essentially what it is. So, as we see, Ragni's got some scars on her legs. It's good, because normally when Ragni gets injured, she eats a dragon soul and it completely revitalizes her, heals her back up. And so, obviously this is going to take some time for her to heal, and she's going to heal naturally like anybody else. And she's going to get scars from her wounds. And that's kind of what I want the Dragon to be at the really end of her story, as a warrior, someone that was moulded out of just pain and suffering and became someone better for it, hopefully. But you see that all over her body with scars. So that's kind of the idea with that one. But, as you see, Tonrak cracks the shits. He gets really angry. Sigurd, you can see that she's been crying because she feels like she's failed Ragni again with her episode. She was forced to stay behind with Karsten to have this, she was forced to stay behind by Ragni, and this is going to lay heavily on her guilt that she should have just ignored Ragni and followed her back. But at the same time, Sigurd would have ended up very much like Sarana and the Nightingale. And obviously, they haven't told Tonrak what's going on. This isn't a blame game. This is a simple, it's happened, and, this and that sort of situation. And that's kind of the way that I really wanted to go with this story, and this part of the story. Now, as we can see in the background, there's someone running through. They're from my previous episode with the Dragon Hunters. With that episode, Majol gets trapped by the Draga, and she can't get out. She sends Ilya, and Ilya sends Aurelia because she's a vampire. She can get there faster. Again, it still took her, 2 days to get here, and there's some things in between that. I even forgot to take her with me on that journey. Bloody hell, just threw Zorba back in there all silently. God, I'm an idiot. But, yeah, she gets here, and she's like, well, what the hell's happened? And they have to update. Like I said about beforehand, the shit hitting the fan. They've just gotten to Solitude, and they've found out what's happened. And then something else comes from behind, and they've got to deal with something else. And the Empire won't help. Maven wouldn't help, because she was rather busy with her Jarl, who turns to be blood-related. Game of Thrones sort of things. But, yeah, another problem has just shown up. And that's what I mean, man. It's like, when life starts to get tough, it gets rougher and rougher and rougher, because while you're dealing with something else comes up behind you and taps you on the shoulder and says, "G'day, I got some bad news for you." So this one, they get into the meet and greet of what's happened. They're caught up on all the news and information on what's happened, and basically, the whole idea that there's people actually fighting with the Draga is nuts. Essentially, this is to recap what's happened with the last episode, in case people like Carter doesn't actually watch it because of a certain character's name which starts with an A-E-R-I-N, kind of catches them up on that story. Bloody hell. And essentially just lets Minerva knows what's happened. And with this information, it's worried, obviously, there's people fighting with the Draga. That Ilya believes it's a cult. And they send Karsten to go and sort of meeting out the general, because again, he's an Imperial Vanguard. He's part of the elite unit of Imperial soldiers, and he can sort of meeting out. So Minerva and Tonrak can, of course, have their people saved by the Empire, because again, the rift is controlled by the Empire. So since they're busy with Ragni and finding out what the hell's going on with her, why she can't wake up, the Empire can go and save their people. But a lot of us know how useful the Empire are in a place like Skyrim. And I'm an Imperial supporter. I really want this kind of bit right here to be like the rains are still kicking, like after what's just happened, and you kind of really see how like quickly a certain scene can be cleaned up, like a massacre. It kind of, this is going to sound bad because I was recording the assassination of Vittorio Vici. I was doing that episode. I think one of the nights Charlie Kirk got killed, and like it wasn't really a military place, but I really wanted this place to look like the Emperors had cleaned it up massively. You know, like they had just gone through and gotten rid of all the bodies and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, the blood thing isn't here because that and this, but I wanted like the Empire had like really had to clean up their mistake. You know, all their men that got killed and this and that. The bodies of everyone, like the named people, are in the Hall of the Dead. But I kind of wanted like the Imperials are just like, we got to clean this shit up within hours and make it look like nothing had ever happened. And that's why like Minerva's like, she's just seeing last night, and then she's seeing the couple of days before with Ragni and Savannah sitting there after coming back from the Reach, and it's just these memories are flooding through her, sort of thing. It's playing on a psyche because she hasn't really slept, and she's been running on like just full attention span for ages. We get here into the castle. There's not many Imperial soldiers around because, again, with what's happened, truth be told, I killed everybody. We get in here, and General Tullius is having a conversation. Carson's guarding the door. Marilia's over there, you know, as her uncle's protector or guard sort of thing, ever since her being freed. And we see a purple dude. Now, this is obviously Commander Mara from the Dark Brotherhood. I want to connect all these stories together, man. That's the fun in storytelling when you're trying to turn a game into a book, that you connect all these pieces together. Mara is just simply a Dark Brotherhood character you have to fight, or you can even help him. You know, if you want to destroy the Dark Brotherhood, he's a guy you go to. He's the second sort of person you have to kill, second last person you have to kill on the Brotherhood's quest line. So I thought I'd intervene him into this because, like I said, I love connecting all these pieces together and making it feel a lot more grand and bigger. And after the death of Vittorio Vici, because he's Skyrim's Pentilius Oculatus commander, he's been sent here a year prior because the Emperor wants to come here, but he's going to make sure it's safe. And obviously, with the Civil War happening, that wasn't going to happen. And hearing about the death of the Emperor's cousin, him being in Dragonbridge, he's come to meet the general. Now, Pentilius Oculatus, he's ordering the general around, right? He's bullying him. And he's an Imperial general. But Maro is the commander of the Skyrim. Pentilius Oculatus, his authority takes command over General Tullius's when it comes to the security of the Emperor. And General Tullius has just shown that he cannot even secure his own city. These guards were wiped out. The Emperor's cousin was killed. I mean, he's barking down. Like, he's treating Tullius like a grunt. This guy, he's just bullying the shit out of Tullius. I mean, one's a general and one's a glorified Chromie guard, but the Chromie guard's got more authority than the general in certain positions like this, for sure. And I was like, man, these textures are actually my textures. They're not my textures. I edited them. There's a mod on my Nexus page called, I think it's my last mod I put out. I just wanted to make them look a bit more like Praetorian guards from Rome, but also obviously keep them intact with Skyrim. So I gave them some purple to kind of really... The last ones on my last story didn't have that. Maybe there's common grunts. I think the future guards will actually have a bit more ebony in their armour. But I really want to put Maro in this. Essentially him just roasting Tullius. And that sort of thing. And him just being pissed, mad, angry. He's like, oh, the Dragonborn was there, because obviously he knows about the peace treaty and that the Empire, the Stormcloaks are both vying for the allyship of the Dragonborn, and he's like, anything we can do, we will help you, of course. He doesn't look bad inside the Dragonborn's eyes. The Emperor doesn't look bad in the Emperor's eyes. And like, oh, funny you speak of that, because we actually need the Empire to go to the Rift with, and save our people. They're in great danger, and we need the Empire's help. And then his typical Imperial bullshit comes in charge. It's like, sorry, we can't do that because we need Solitude to be restored back to its usual self. And the space of 2 weeks, we'll have the Emperor here, so we need every single available Imperial soldier from both the Dragonborn's Lent soldiers and, of course, any Imperial soldiers in the area need to be here to secure and fortify Solitude. So not only has he just, refused their requests after giving it to him, but he's also now taken the Imperial soldiers that follow the Dragonborn off the Dragonborn's team. Because, like I said, his authority comes in. His authority outranks General Tullius's in this position, and his orders are simply to any Imperial troops in the area must fortify Solitude. And that is essentially the plan with that. Even the ones that were given over to the Dragonborn to fight dragons. They are now under Maro's commands, pretty much. And Minerva's pissed. I mean, she's angry. We get to see her throw out some... We get to see her throw hands. I don't love seeing Minerva throw hands. She's a very quirky, cheeky, elf, and seeing her crack the shits was a lot of fun to do, because this is something that she would do in the situation. You just offered to help her, and then they took it away. And she's tired, and she's just witnessed someone she considers to be like a younger sister, or even somewhat of a companion, like a daughter. Minerva doesn't see her as a daughter, but she sees her as it's like an older person looking after a younger person, essentially. It's like an older sister, or someone that came from the same sort of area, but I don't know how to really describe it. It's, seeing what she's seen and having no sleep, she's going to crap the absolute friggin' shits, and rightfully so. I mean, anybody in that situation would. And Tonrak was kind of surprised. He saw it like, this was Minerva cracking the shits this time. And this is the kind of why I really likes her, because, he sees a lot. He doesn't see her as a mage. He sees her as an equal, sort of thing. And I really like that about their relationship, that there's times that Tonrak's like, yeah, I chose the right person to be around. It's a mutual respect between the both of them. And I really like their dynamic. Now, obviously, we get into some sort of things here, with, General Tullius's orders having to stand, and he's the sort of bloke that he's a general. He's got to sit around a war table and give commands and listen to bad shit all day. Like, his job was pretty much hearing bad news and giving out bad orders that he knows is going to get people killed. That sort of thing, right? And with that, he's learned to really structure himself to keep himself cool, and he's hearing like a bunch of people come in here cracking the shits. Ragnar comes in threatening to topple the place and join Ulfric. Bloody Sigurd comes in here talking mad shit, telling them to get screwed. Minerva and Tonrak threaten to come in, and they're going to join the Stormcloaks, and he's just sitting there going, you people are nothing but pains in my fucking ass. Like, that's his general thought, but he's got to keep himself cool. He's also got to follow his orders, because he knows he's massively screwed up. Even if it wasn't directly his fault, it's still his fault, because Solitude is his command. Elisif doesn't rule Solitude, Tullius does. And having the Emperor's cousin be murdered under his watch, dude, oh, bro, the ball has been dropped massively. And that weight's connected to his ankle, and that weight is dropping to the bottom of the ocean. But he's going to do what he's got to do. And so, he's listened to all these companions of the Dragonborn, even the Dragonborn herself, talk mad loads of shit. And he's like, look, I can't directly help you. But then he kind of has an idea, and has to get his niece, Marulia Tullius, who was part of the Civil War stories, to follow along. Now, at this time, they think Sigurd's going to follow them. But Sigurd doesn't actually have any sort of story in this, because she's gone into kind of silent, guilty mode. She's obviously ravaged. She's been ravaged with what's happened to the Dragonborn too. So many things like that have obviously. Sigurd's not leaving her side this time. I probably should add that in there, but I can add that in the future stories. But again, Marulia has been given to Tonrak and Minerva to help them out. She'll gather a few fighters along the way of Imperial soldiers. It's not big enough to be anything that the Pentilius Ocularis would notice, but it also gives his niece some time back out in the field to get her ready, to get her out of to get him away from her, essentially, because ever since she's gotten back from her time in Windhelm, she's had a lot of trouble spiritually, mentally with what's happened to her, and obviously physically with the burns and the eye and things like that, which have really messed with her personality and character and all that sort of things. And maybe this might be good for his niece, but this is also helps his niece out, get her back into the fight, but also kind of really it helps them both out. They get an Imperial commander of the Vanguard, and essentially Tonrak and Minerva get some sort of Imperial support that can gather along the way with Marilia. And obviously you see, Carsten, he's now going to be the new replacement for Centaurus, and General Tullius needs to have a few words with him, make sure that everything's clear, that, you know, that the support of the Dragonborn is of the utmost importance, and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, people really like Carsten, from what I've seen, so you get a bit more light into him. He's kind of the Imperial version of Centaurus, and there's a good story with him. Like I've said a few times, his character is starting to build up. The ambers are starting to fly, and this is the first time I've actually played as him in the story. So as you can see, I've been building him up over time, ever since his introduction. He's going to have a lot more story in the future, and he even could rival the story of Centaurus himself. Because Centaurus is obviously, his story's changed quite a bit, and things will obviously change with him, with what's happened. Just cataclysm of absolute events blowing up in certain directions and things like that, but that's just the way that it is. Now, with this scene, I really wanted there to be like a sort of moment of like sit down and understanding between both Tonrak and Minerva. And Minerva's had no sleep for probably almost like 24 hours. More even. And, you know, Tonrak just really wants to find out how she's going. And, you know, Minerva's going to get on the drink and just get absolutely hammered. Because, like I said, she's an 80-plus-year-old elf. I mean, elves age very differently to mortals in Elder Scrolls. They age normally until they're like 18 or 19, and they just slow down for some weird reason. But yeah, so Minerva really gets into her feelings. So does Tonrak in a way. At the very start of this, they're both obviously terrified and scared of what's happened, and they would never tell the other people how they feel apart from each other, because, I mean, if you're laying with somebody for at least a few weeks or a month, I don't remember how long this has gone for, you're obviously going to feel very comfortable around to talk about your feelings, hopefully, but get kind of a general feeling about how they're feeling about it all, how they're dealing with it. English just isn't working for me right now. How they're dealing with it together and things like that. And it's a touching moment, especially when, you know, they start to really talk about the Nightingale. And I had plans for the Nightingale, right? Because I decided to kill her about a week before I actually put it out there. I shit you not. It was an on-the-spot decision that I thought would be really gravitational towards the story. Not only did she lose her heart, but she lost her soul. And, you know, Ragnar didn't see her too much in the inn, because she wasn't really in the inn with her friends, she was more up there with Serana. And that wench that was walking around all the time, kind of, you know, Minerva's a very intellectual person, very smart, and she was like, maybe that's her, and she believed it was her, but she didn't open her mouth because, you know, she's not going to go and blow the whole entire cover of the Nightingale. And Tonrak, he had her eyes on her because she was very beautiful, but he felt like he had to keep her eyes on her because she was sort of shifty and didn't want to lose his shit, as he did in an episode, and she was able to grab his stuff without him noticing, and that she felt familiar somehow, and he couldn't keep her eyes off her. Not in the sort of, like, I've got my eyes on your ass sort of way, but I've got my eyes on you because somehow I know you sort of feeling. And I was going to have that go a lot further on with, say, Nightingale surviving, and then up in the Reach, and then the wench is there again, and Tonrak's like, ooh, yeah, you're pretty hot, come to bed with me, and Minerva, and just being a deviant, and Minerva's like, you don't know who she is, don't you? And Tonrak's like, she's a hot redhead, and Minerva's like, oh, you're a fool, I'll let you figure that one out on your own. But obviously the story changed quite a bit, and Minerva can now talk about who she thought the Nightingale was of Tonrak, because she is dead. And then he talks about Serana not really liking her, that she's insufferable, that she's, you know, she's like the girlfriend of our friend. But he did understand that Serana did protect Ragni, and that she did make Ragni feel special and loved. And that's kind of what we want for our friends. It doesn't matter who they're with, as long as they feel happy, safe, and cared for and loved, will tolerate that other person's shit because they offer more than they take out, I think. That sort of thing. But yeah, I really wanted them to have this just peaceful moment on their own, just talking about their shit. Because no doubt they do a lot of this stuff, in the background of the stories. But I really wanted to show them just there in the moment together. As you can see, Tonrak's not drinking, and he talks about this, saying that, drinking in bad times isn't a good idea. That the reason he drinks is because he's in good times. And it's very, very good, because alcohol isn't something that you want to drink if you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month. It's a substitute that you do not want. I heard a saying a few years ago that, alcohol steals happiness from tomorrow. And it very much does. I mean, if you're with friends and you're celebrating Easter or Christmas or a birthday, it's absolutely something that you want to do. It's, you drink in moderation, not in bad situations. And as you can see, Tonrak stayed sober, let Minerva get on the piss, put her to bed, because he's obviously, in his previous story, he was a bit of a Chad. He was out there rooting and tooting, Hittich and Quidditch, pump and dump sort of bloke. And with Minerva, he feels that she's a lot more important to his life than just something simple like that. So he does take care of her. He does deeply care about her. He no doubt probably even loves her. I definitely think there's a love there. And there's obviously Lyris, one of his closest friends that Minerva saved from the mines in Markarth, and he met later on that helped him in his journey with the companions. So they're good mates. I mean, I think, Lyris is like that character where it's like, they're both my friends, they both met me, but then they both started dating, that sort of thing. Honestly, this episode, I just went through it and tried to skip a bunch of shit, just getting background information done, so it was like Tonrak, and they were sorting out a plan for tomorrow, that, that a few of their forces had to stay behind and protect the Dragonborn, and Rognik was the one that was going to stay there and watch over Ragni, make sure she was safe, make sure she was this and she was that, and anybody else that wanted to stay was going to stay and look after Ragni. Anybody else that wanted to go to the Rift and save their friends would follow Tonrak out the door. But everyone else would stay and guard the temple. So I've got to do a lot of work on making sure that looks legit. Having security absolutely everywhere while she's in a deep sleep. Now, as we've seen, she's in a nightmare. And it's actually a good way to wake Freya up, funny enough, because I have some ideas. I have some pretty cool ideas. I have a lot of shit I've got to do. My God, I've thrown C4 into the pond and blown it up, and now I've got to put all the duck pieces back together. But it's going to be a big story. So now I've actually got a reason to wake Freya up, which she was improvising, and which will maybe will help wake the Dragonborn up. But there's a lot more story in there. I can do an entire episode on that, and then I've got the episodes going with Centauros and the contract, and now Tonrak and Minerva, and my God. How would you feel about walking to a temple of the Divines to find 3 Daedra in there? Be a weird time. It'd be a real weird time. Absolutely bad. We skip through to the next day, and we find that, it's the rains have pissed off, the hawks are flying over the castle there, over the temple. Could be kind, could just be natural nature. But he's picked up Marulia Tullius. She's ready to leave the castle after her. She hasn't left since her time since she was rescued from Windhelm, and this is hopefully do some. And he's also spotted the 2 Daedra leaving the temple. Thinking, no, well, they're doing something for Minerva, no doubt. They are hers, so he thinks. So they kind of don't really completely 100% know. But there's the people here that are going to follow them out on the journey. There's only 2 dudes in this. I know. I know, guys. I know I get made fun of quite a bit for having very low male characters. But we'll gather some more on the way, no doubt. One of them will be a fan's creation, or 2 of them. 3 of them, actually. But as we see, they're leaving, and Minerva's at the front door, and Tonrak's like, oh, here we go. So what does she want before we go? She's meant to be sleeping, but I guess she wants to see me off. I'll grab a quick little cheeky kiss before I leave, give me some hopes up, and that sort of stuff. And he makes, obviously, a few remarks about getting kissed by Minerva and having an erection in his armour. Oh, I thought that was funny. But I'm me. And he's trying to be like the whole... he's got too much confidence, this fella, you know? Way too much confidence. And Minerva's like, get screwed, I'm coming with you. And obviously Lyris behind him just starts cracking up laughing. And, you know, she's like, yes, I've got my 2 best friends with me. They're going to be bullying each other. This is going to be a fun walk. And I like it. I mean, if I can put some small characters in there and really give them a bit more life, it flares up the other characters. It really gives them a lot more life, which is what I like doing. Excuse my yawn. I've been talking for an hour, I think. And yeah, so Torax said he was going to go. Minerva's going to stay behind. Minerva was like, no, you said that. I did not. I'm coming with. And Torax's like, well, Ragni needs you. But she's like, no, I do not. No, she does not. I'm coming with you. And Torax's like, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. And at the same time, I'm kind of relieved because I like you and I like you around me. And obviously your magic will help us out quite a bit out in the road. And yeah, they've got 3 mages of them. If I remember to add the 3rd mage, which is the vampire, you absolute idiot Centaurus. But yeah, there's that. This is kind of where it's going. The next episode, the journey across Skyrim, the whole entire team, the Fellowship of the Dragonborn has been blown up. Some have died, some have been forced in different paths, and the shit's hit the fan, and 2 others have had to go somewhere else. And it's kind of the story I wanted to tell, where Ragni decided to force her friends away to go for a nice quiet walk, and that didn't end up quite well for her. And it's just like, they were always safe when they were around each other and around her friends. But now things have happened which have blown things out of the water, and we're on a bit of a dark path. And things will get dark and darker, very dark. So if you like grounded stories, welcome. If you don't, you won't. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this little background video. Other than that, that's just kind of what goes through my head making all these sort of things. Kind of how I try to turn Skyrim's story into a book. How I try to add it and fill it full of details and fix things up that I thought was shit, or amplify things that got like a tiny bit of juice in them, but nowhere near enough because of game development times and budget and stuff like that, and that sort of thing. That's just kind of runs through my mind, trying to turn these things into a living, breathing story instead of a video game that centers around the character. Other than that, I'm out of here. Look after yourselves. Have a good one. Peace.